Well, hello everybody. I want to welcome you to my week 15 video, and this is the very last one for this semester. It's kind of sad, and I want to let you know how much I appreciate each one of you, what a great job you've done. Thank you for your hard work and for your patience through the class. So, I'm going to talk to you about the final exam review sheet. And to access that, you want to go to Content up toward the top of our Brightspace page, and then click on Course Documents, and then look for Final Exam Review Sheet. And this will be extremely helpful to you um, as you are preparing for the final. So the final is very much like the midterm. Only it is not cumulative, so the actual information that you'll need to know doesn't begin until after the midterm ends. So you won't have to go back and actually study or memorize a lot of information or material from before the midterm. So that's a good thing to know. It's divided into two parts, just like the midterm was as well. So here are the things that you need to study, and it's always a good idea to pull up the course syllabus, which you can find by going to Content and then right under Table of Contents, Course Syllabus, because it lays out for you what texts are under what genres and time periods when you see the unit labels there. So you should know the following periods and genres, and remember that's a word that means types or kinds of literature, American literature, and their basic common themes, so their main meanings, their characteristics, their main ideas. So early 20th century prose, the Harlem Renaissance, and literature since 1945, and that's including modernism and postmodernism. So you want to look back at the videos that I provided for you about each one of those time periods and genres. You might want to rewatch those videos. You might want to look at the documents that accompany those videos. And again, you can look at the weekly checklist, or you can look back at the course syllabus to see, what those documents are and where you can access them. Most of them are under, obviously, course documents. And then carefully study the discussion boards since the midterm. Go back and reread them. I will open all of them up for you so that you can see them again. And you might want to not only look back at your own comments and my response to you and classmates' responses to you, but you might want to read the whole thread on a lot of those discussion boards, so that maybe questions that you didn't answer but other classmates did respond to, you can absorb that material as well. So we have really three sections in part one, and all of them together count for 50% of the final exam grade, or 100 points. So note that the entire final exam counts for 20% of your final grade in the class. So it is a big point maker. The very first little section consists of multiple choice questions, and here's an example of what one of those might look like. The Harlem Renaissance refers to A, blossoming circa 1918 to 1937 of African American culture, particularly in the creative arts. B, the most influential movement in African American literary history. C, a movement that extended beyond literature, embracing musical, theatrical, and visual arts. D, a movement that sought to reconceptualize the Negro, and these are the words of Harlem Renaissance writers, not my words, apart from the white stereotypes that had influenced Black people's relationship to their heritage and to each other. Or E, all of the above. So if you guess that the correct answer is E, you are right. It's all of the above. And so that same little birdie that talked to me back at the midterm has flown in and whispered in my ear, this question just might be on the final exam, and the folks who are watching the video are probably going to get it correct. The second portion of part one consists of fill in the blank questions, and here's an example of what one of those questions might look like. So you'll actually, because of the way quizzes are set up, and you take this in the quizzes section, it's kind of multiple choice too, really. If we were doing it in class, you would literally fill in the blank. But here's an example. The 20th century saw the emergence of a genre, a type or kind, called blank, which responded to the world's increasing complexity by asserting the idea that the individual, just one person, had the potential to achieve a broader perspective than that offered by any one society or its history. So if you guessed modernism, you are right. So remember when we were studying modernism, we said that after the world wars and after the introduction of television and radio and film, and after the world became more easily mobile with new transportation like air flight and all of that, the world became easier in some ways, but really a lot more complicated in others. And so modernism gives us that view that just one person has the potential now, because the world's come into view. The world has come into our living rooms. We can fly to the other side of the world fairly quickly and easily. So a broader perspective, a broader idea of the world than that offered just by our society or our own history. And then that third portion of part one features actual quotes or passages from the text we've studied since the midterm, and it will be your job to identify the title of the text and the author. So again, you'll have a listing of text and authors for each question, and obviously not all of them that are listed will actually be correct, so it's your job to figure out the correct one. I will not put in any quotes that we have not mentioned either in the discussion boards or in my videos. So note that. These will be quotes that are really identifiable with a text, but you're still going to have to study. So here's an example. Identify the name of the text and the author for the following quote. "What's the matter with you all of a sudden?" he asked, frowning as he screwed the top on the flask and put it quickly back inside the Bible. "You just a while ago said you didn't believe in nothing. I thought you was some girl." So if you guess that the answer is Flannery O'Connor's Good Country People, you are correct. And the little birdie flew in and said, "Hey, I think that's probably going to be on the final exam." So yay for those of you who actually watched the video and didn't fast forward it, but actually listened to it in real time. Yeah. And then part two of the final consists again of a short essay question, and it counts for 50% or 100 points of the final exam grade. So in other words, 10% of your final grade in the class. And the question spans the periods, the themes, the genres of American Lit that we've studied, again, since the midterm. You'll be expected, again, just like with the midterm, to write at least 4 paragraphs. So 4 normal paragraphs, not little bitty, itty bitty short ones. You do not need a works cited page as with the midterm, but you should cite in the body of your essay in correct MLA formatting, quoting at least 2 times, and really you probably should do so more than that, but at least 2. Your essay should also contain a formal heading on page 1 that includes your name, my name, the course name, and the date in correct MLA formatting in the upper left-hand corner, and then your last name and the page number in the upper right-hand corner of all pages. If you don't do it for page 1, that's fine, but if you go into a page 2, you definitely should do it. So here are some examples using HRH Princess Fufu, who by the way is asleep upstairs right now. So your name, my name, the course name, and then the date. So if we were saying 3 May 2021, that's how it would appear. And so here's an example of an incorporated quote with a correct in-text citation in MLA formatting. Because remember, if you drop the quote, you're going to get points deducted, so don't do it. The author masterfully presents a seemingly naive young man who poses as a Bible salesman, : "Well, lady, I'll tell you the truth. Not many people want to buy a Bible nowadays, And besides, I know I'm real simple. I don't know how to say a thing but to say it. I'm just a country boy, unquote. Parenthesis O'Connor, 362, end parenthesis, period. So notice that there's a colon after the words Bible salesman. What would happen if there wasn't a colon there, but there was a period? Well, the quote would be dropped and you would get points deducted from your final exam grade. So remember the rule. Any time a quote appears as a sentence by itself with no wording of yours in the same sentence, you have dropped it, even if the sentence you write before the quote introduces it. If that quote appears by itself as a sentence, it is dropped and you get points deducted. So we can use the colon method here because the sentence just before the quote is an independent clause. It's a complete sentence. It has a subject. It has a verb. It makes sense on its own. It can stand alone. If that sentence was a dependent clause that could not stand alone, we couldn't use the colon. We would have to use a comma. So that's the rule there. And notice those brackets around the words a Bible. So if you remember from back in 1010 when you were being introduced to MLA, brackets are used to show your reader you changed a word or two. And so if you look back at the original quote from O'Connor's Good Country People, probably the word that was used there was one. Not many people want to buy one nowadays. And so this writer bracketed that and changed it to a Bible so that the reader knows what's being talked about here and it makes sense. Notice there's no period after I'm just a country boy at the end of the quote. Your period does not go there in MLA. That's not the end of your sentence. Your sentence ends after the in-text citation. And so bear that in mind. Notice there's no page. There's no P for page inside the in-text citation. There's no comma between O'Connor and 362. It's just O'Connor, 362, the end parenthesis, and then the period. But remember that if you're quoting from poetry, you won't place the page number inside the in-text citation. Rather, you'll place the line number from within the poem. So you may have to count the lines to figure out which line you're quoting from. And the reason that we do that, again, is because most poems are short works, many of them only appearing on one page. So it's easier for your reader to have the line number rather than the page number to refer to. And then be sure not to use first or second person in your writing. So do not use I or me. Do not say, I feel that Good Country People is an example of local color realism, or I feel Good Country People is an example of postmodernism. Do not say that. Do not use you or your, second person, unless these words are part of a quote. This is formal academic writing, and you need to have a formal voice because your audience is an academic one. So you uplift your language, you elevate it by avoiding first and second person and using one or ones instead, or restructuring your sentence to avoid the need for that type of wording. And let's see if there's anything else I want to tell you. So if you're quoting from a poem, don't forget to use the diagonals, right, to mark the line breaks. And so you'll have the first line of your poem, a space, the diagonal, a space, and then the next line, a space, a diagonal, a space, then the next line, right? And then in parentheses, instead of the page number, you have the author's last name and the line number or numbers. And the first time you quote from that poem, you'll place a comma. Let's say the author's last name is Smith. Smith, comma, lines 1 through 2, 1-2, in parentheses, period. After that, all you have to do is put Smith and then the line number. You don't have to put the word lines, and you're not going to use a comma after that initial time. But that first time around, you're letting your reader know, this is a poem. I'm quoting from line numbers now. So here are those short essay questions, and these are the real ones. You have a choice this time around. So first, you could choose to answer this question. Explain why modern American literature should be studied. What universal themes does it uphold? What particular rhetorical techniques and strategies does it demonstrate? How does it help us become better, wiser human beings? So you want to use specific examples of at least 2 texts that we've studied this semester to illustrate your point. And one of them must be from after the midterm, okay? One of them could be from before the midterm, but one of them has to be something we've studied after the midterm. So you need a clear thesis statement in this little short essay response, just like with the midterm. So you have your first introductory paragraph, and then your very last sentence of that intro should be a clear thesis statement that tells us what this paper is going to do, right? So your topics within your little short essay, your main points, are going to consist of the questions that I'm asking you. So why modern American lit should be studied, using these 2 examples, the universal themes that it upholds, so themes that appeal to almost everyone, that touch almost everyone, using your 2 examples of the text that you're talking about, the rhetorical techniques and strategies that these 2 texts demonstrate, and then how these 2 texts maybe teach a lesson, have a theme that allows us to be better, wiser human beings, right? So your thesis might look something like a careful analysis of blank and blank, whatever the 2 titles are, reveal why American literature is important, the universal themes it upholds, the rhetorical techniques and strategies it demonstrates, and how it helps us to be better, wiser humans, right? And then you follow that guideline that you create in your thesis statement. Now, the other option you could choose would be to choose and comment on 2 texts that we've studied this semester. Again, one of them must be one we've looked at since the midterm, but one of them could be one that we looked at from before the midterm. So what are the main messages and themes? How do these writings compare with one another? What are their similarities and differences? So this time, if you chose option 2, you're doing a compare and contrast of 2 different texts, obviously. And so it's kind of interesting to look at something like that. So you might compare, for example, something like Zora Neale Hurston's How It Feels to Be Colored Me with County Cullen's Incident. Those 2 kind of lend themselves well to a comparison and contrast. Because in one of them, an Incident, we see how the little boy who is called a racial slur can't seem to get over that. We see how it impacts him in a really adverse way throughout his life, because the narrator tells this story many years later, and it's still haunting him and affecting him. In Zora Neale's piece, we see the exact opposite. We see someone who has experienced racism when she leaves her hometown and goes to a bigger town, and realizes for the first time that she is quote unquote colored, but it doesn't get her down. She is determined that it's not going to affect her. So we have sort of the opposite reaction there. That's a difference. The genres are different. Incident is a poem. Zora Neale's piece is prose. It is not a poem. And so, you can comment on the genre. You can comment on, do you feel like they're examples of realism, both of them? Or, what are they both examples of the Harlem Renaissance? How do we know? You can comment on similar rhetorical techniques. So are you seeing maybe metaphor in both of them? And certainly you are in Zora Neale's piece when she talks about, the miscellaneous items that are inside the bags of different colors. And really she's using that as a metaphor for human beings who look different on the outside, but on the inside we share so much in common. And God loves all of us, right? The same. So you might comment on the different techniques that are used, plot, character, any other element of the 2 texts that you see that are similar or different. And you would set it up in the same way as I just explain for number one, you would have your introductory paragraph with your thesis as the last sentence of that paragraph. You would place into that thesis what the paper's going to do, right? You would use the questions that I'm asking as the main points, and that's how you would sort of divide it up. So you need to take part one by going to the quizzes tab up at the top of our Brightspace page, and then looking for final exam part one. And so, the questions, even though they're set up a little bit differently, they're all essentially multiple choice, because quizzes won't really allow us to do a whole lot more than that, and it is timed. And note that both parts 1 and 2 will open at 8 o'clock a.m. on Monday the 2nd. You will not be able to access them before that time, but they'll open at Monday, 8 o'clock a.m. on Monday the 2nd of May, and you want to take part 1 before 11:59 p.m. on Tuesday the 3rd. So you have 2 whole days to do this. And then you can submit your short essay for part 2 into the assignments tab. So that's also up toward the top of our Brightspace page. You'll click there, and then you'll look for final exam part 2. So this section is not timed. You don't have to go on there and then actually type the essay in a timed situation. Rather, you can take your time in writing that short essay response and use your textbook, class materials, your notes as you're writing. So you can do that on your own, just in a Word document, and take your time. But you have to submit it no later than 11:59 p.m. on the day of our final, which is May the 3rd. And again, it will open at 8 o'clock a.m. on the 2nd. So you have really 2 whole days there to submit it. With part 1, note that you cannot use any other notes or class materials or your textbook. You must take that quiz, and when you do so, there will be a little statement there that basically says, by taking this quiz, I agree that I will not use any additional materials to assist me. I will not cheat in any way, etc. So here are some final exam policies and end of the semester policies that you should be aware of. Final grades for all your classes will be found by going to My Pellissippi and looking under, I believe they title it Final Grades. And while we as instructors are responsible, obviously, for grading your final exams and submitting them into the system, we're not the ones who are responsible for actually allowing you to see them in Banner, also called My Pellissippi, but rather the higher powers in the IT world are the people who manage all of that. So if you were to email me and say, Professor when will I be able to see my final grade in the class? I don't know the answer to that, so I can't help you there. But generally, grades become visible a day to 2 days after we have put them into the system. And so just do be aware of that. Please do not email me asking for your grade on the final exam or for your final grade in the class. I am, at this point, as we all are, inundated with grading final papers, final exams, and posting grades and finalizing everything for the semester for over 100 people. And I am not able to respond to individual inquiries about all that. So I do apologize. I wish that I were able. I'm just not. Note that you can at any point in time see your current grades for all assignments in the class so far by going to grades on our Brightspace course page, and you can look at running total. And note that anything that's not already submitted, graded, and finished and put into the system by me will not show up yet on the running total. So it's possible that you're going to have an A in the class, but it's not looking like an A on the running total because not everything has been submitted yet. The final exam hasn't been submitted yet. So be aware of that. Grades are calculated by the Brightspace system, and so far, knock on wood, it has never made an error that I'm aware of. However, because I'm old and I don't trust this highfalutin technology, and I come from East Ridge, I keep a separate hard copy of grades that I manually enter and have been doing so since day one, literally, along with meticulous notes about every student. And so at the end of the semester, I go back and I double check bright spaces calculations with my own, just to try to be doubly sure that they are correct. So finally, I have really enjoyed having each one of you in my class this semester. I know that this semester has continued to be a challenging one for us, and I thank you for just hanging in there with me. If I can do anything to be of help to you in the future, I hope that you will not hesitate to email and hopefully even to maybe visit me next semester. You have been absolutely one of my all-time favorite classes, and I wish you the best. Stay in touch with me and let me know how you're doing. So good luck to you with all your final exams. Thank you again, and happy summer.